The Irish became even better because it fit their climate so well till the disease came. Now the French were a little different, okay? Every king, by the way, and every queen had their botanical gardens. You know, you hear the Kew Royal Gardens. That's because they wanted to bring new plants to their people. Marie Antoinette put a garland of potato flowers on her head, and everybody wanted to have something as pretty as the queen wore. The other thing the king did, which was quite interesting, is he put guards around his royal gardens 24 hours a day around the potato plots. And they made sure no one saw them. And then when the potatoes got ripe, he put them on in the day and took them off at night. What do you think happened to the potatoes at night? They were miraculously harvested. And that's how potatoes came to France. And again, you have to figure out how to manipulate things, you might say. Now, the tomato is one that I really like, and I apologize because I know one of our speakers has been talking about it. But I always think about, how did the Italians cook before there were tomatoes? I mean, you think about it. I mean, that's a New World crop. This is like, 1500 to get tomatoes. They had civilization there since probably 1000 BC. What did they cook with? Well, it's cream sauces. But the tomato comes in. Okay. Now, they were called love apples. Okay? Now, first of all, you need to understand, potatoes and tomatoes are both in the Solanaceae species. Deadly nightshades in the same species. Every part of the tomato, every part of the potato is poisonous, except the potato and the tomato. And in potatoes, some of the potatoes are poisonous too, but we don't eat those, okay? So, when you broke up with your boyfriend, or you broke up with your girlfriend, in Italy, you would eat a love apple in honor of that unrequited love. So that you would then sort of say, I'm going to pine away. This is very serious. I could eat this tomato because of the dying love that was unrequited. Well, that would sell a lot of tomatoes. Okay? Corn comes from the New World too. Now tobacco. We've got to come back to tobacco. This is a fun one. Now, you don't eat tobacco, right? At least I hope you don't. You smoke it. So, why would you want to smoke tobacco? You've never seen tobacco. It's a New World crop. And why is it the English smoke pipes and the Italians and Spaniards smoke cigarettes? It's because when you get exposed to a new crop, you figure out how the people who showed it to you did it, thinking that's the right way. The tobacco in North America has 8 times the nicotine of the tobacco in the Caribbeans. If you're an American Indian, you smoke a peace pipe. You take a puff, you pass it to the next guy, he takes a puff, pass it to the next guy. You take 2 puffs, you're on flat on your back, okay? That's how the American Indians smoked. The English, the Germans, the Dutch, they colonized North America. Well, you smoke in a pipe, that's clear, right? The Spaniards, the Italians, they come down to the Caribbean. How do they smoke? Well, it's a really mild tobacco. You just roll up the leaf and you smoke it. That's why they smoke cigarettes. Okay? Now, I like this. This is an American pipe from an American Indian tribe. This is the English rendition. Do you think they were mimicking something? And then this is what it evolved to. Now, you can also tell a lot about plants by their names. How many of you think the English were the group that colonized America? Anybody? Okay, by and large, right? Sometimes we even debate whether English is the national language, right? Sometimes. Okay. The English word for alfalfa is lucerne. How many of you know alfalfa is lucerne? Okay, a few. You mainly see it in dairies. There's a few traditional dairies where it's the lucerne dairy. Okay? That's because of alfalfa. Alfalfa is an Arabic word meaning food for horses. Now, and when they controlled Spain, they brought alfalfa to Spain. When the Spaniards then went to Mexico, they brought alfalfa to Mexico, brought it up to California. You have lucerne in the East Coast, you have alfalfa in the West Coast. Which of those 2 introductions do you think became the predominant introduction across the United States? Alfalfa from the West Coast, right? So you can tell the origin of where these crops came from in part by what they were called. Now, lessons learned. Plants tend to move better west to east and east to west than north to south due to the photoperiodism. Crops often thrive in areas outside their centers of diversity because these centers are often the centers of diversity for the pests and diseases. You have what's known as the coevolution of the host and the parasite. So if you want to find resistance, you go back to the original center if it has the pest. If you want to grow it disease-free, you take it somewhere else. Okay? The Irish potato famine is a great example. And plant introductions best succeed if they are variable and move to a similar climatic condition. The wheat of the Great Plains was very poor, very marginal, until we brought in the Russian wheats from the steppes. Turkey wheat, which came from Turkey and then Russia, is ideally suited to the hot, dry climates we have in the Great Plains. Nebraska used to grow spring wheat, it was a disaster. Texas used to grow soft red winter wheats, they were a disaster. It's only when turkey wheat came in that we had the base for the Great Plains hard red or hard white winter wheat industries. Now, domestication continues today. This is the point, we're getting sort of close to the end, where new crops are being discovered and used. And I think you should also remember that we do have new crops. How many of you can remember the first time you ate a kiwi fruit? I was in an economic botany class. We went down to an ethnic market and we saw star fruit, whoa, kiwi fruit, all these other things, okay? And so domestication still occurs. Globalization, we're seeing new things. I expect you'll see 300 varieties of eggplant sometime in America when we get enough globalization going on, okay? And plant breeding may be considered the scientific continuation of domestication. And again, you got to look at some of these. Jonathan Swift, and he gave it for his opinion that whoever could make 2 ears of corn or 2 blades of grass to grow upon a spot of ground where only one grew before would deserve better of mankind and do more essential service to his country than the whole race of politicians put together. And he was sort of a contrarian. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. That was written in the 1600s, right? But now let's take a look at the second quote. By the way, 2 ears of corn. Again, Jonathan Swift, that'd be a wheat plant. He wasn't that familiar with the maize, the American maize. Frederick the Great, one of the great kings of Prussia, big soldier. Who would bring into being that there are henceforth 3 or 4 spikes, again that's got to be wheat or barley, where previously only 1 spike stood? He proved its homeland a service which is to be valued more highly than the deeds of many kings, commanders, and poets. Not bad for one of the great Prussian kings. So that leads us to the 5 faces of germplasm. Okay. We talked a little bit about the wild relatives. Those are the plants that live in the wild that then become the progenitors of our species. Okay? Our crop plants. We talk about the weedy relatives. Those are the ones that when we disturb a habitat, they come from the wild and they are the invasive species. Okay? The first form of cultivation would be primitive cultivars or land races. Still extremely valuable. If you talk to Scott Haley or Jim Quick and ask them where the Russian wheat aphid source of resistance came from, it came from Iran. It's a land race. T57, right, Scott? It's a land race. You still go back to those. They're very sustainable. It's what subsistence farmers grow. You'll never get rich on them, but you'll never go to starve because they're very tough. Okay? Then you have the modern cultivars in Colorado. They do things like Ripper and Hatcher and other ones. Okay? And then you have the breeding lines, which are the cultivars of the future, which are the ones we've yet to tell you about. Okay? Now, going back to the tomato, I just want to show you where genes came from. Okay? Here's the common tomato. You get genes for geminivirus from Lycopersicum chilense, genes for nematode resistance from Peruvianum, genes for soluble solids. I'm not going to try that one. Okay? Fusarium, another disease from Pinelli. Hirsutum, genes for fruit color and soluble solids. Pimpinellifolium, bacterial speck, lycopene, and fruit size. This is the little Pimpinellifolium, and it has genes that make tomatoes bigger. Okay? I mean, it's kind of cool. Okay? These are all of the wild species and what they have donated to tomatoes. And I apologize if you can't see them, but tons of bacterial,